Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking literally one of the most epic stories in history. We are talking about Rome. How did a civilization scale the absolute heights of global dominance, leaving a legacy that completely shaped the modern world, only to face a collapse so profound that its echoes are still felt today? Well, let's track this incredible journey together, right from a scrappy little beginning to a surprising, almost unbelievable survival. It's the ultimate question, isn't it? When a society reaches the absolute pinnacle of power, wealth, and military might, when its borders literally stretch across continents and its culture dominates the globe, how does the whole shebang just fall apart? We tend to think of invincible empires collapsing overnight in some sudden, fiery apocalypse. But the truth of how a true superpower actually breaks down is far more suspenseful, far more complex, and honestly, a lot more relevant to us today. Part 1. The Ascent to Superpower. From city-state to titan. To really understand the fall, we have to grasp the sheer, unprecedented scale of the climb. Rome didn't start out as this sprawling titan. It actually began as just a single, scrappy Italian city-state. But through centuries of relentless warfare and unmatched political organization, they expanded. They systematically took on and defeated massive rival powers. Think of Carthage in the legendary Punic Wars. With every single conquest, Rome swallowed up new territories, vast wealth, vital trade routes, and gained total strategic control of the Mediterranean. They didn't just win wars, they absorbed the spoils to fuel the very next one. But, all that rapid expansion and sudden wealth, it created massive internal friction, sparking decades of brutal civil wars. The Republic was basically tearing itself apart. Following Julius Caesar's assassination, his heir, Octavian, defeated his rivals. And in 27 BCE, he became Augustus. The chaotic republic was formally transformed into an empire, centralized under one absolute ruler. Part 2. The Engine of Rome, the Blueprint of Power. So, with a single emperor running the show, how did this massive machine actually function day to day? To control millions of people across vast geographies required a brilliant blueprint built on 4 unshakable pillars. First up, military discipline. Second, infrastructure. Those same highly disciplined soldiers literally built the Roman roads and bridges that connected incredibly distant provinces. Third, cultural integration. And fourth, an economic engine driven by agriculture and trade. Information, armies, and taxes could move effortlessly because this entire system was perfectly synced up. But the absolute most fascinating secret to their success was that third pillar, integration. It's actually incredibly counterintuitive. When Rome conquered a territory, they rarely tried to just wipe out the local culture. Instead, they absorbed it. They incorporated local elites and offered a real path to Roman citizenship. By not erasing the people they conquered, they essentially bound the empire together, turning former enemies into stakeholders in Rome's own success. Part 3. Peak and Approaching Crisis. The Tipping Point. For a long time, this system ushered in the Pax Romana, a true golden age of stability. But, as we know, success often breathes its own fatal vulnerabilities. At its absolute peak under Emperor Trajan around 117 CE, Rome controlled huge swaths of Europe, Africa, and the Near East. It was remarkably stable and prosperous. Fast forward just over a century to the crisis of the 3rd century, however, and it is pure chaos. We're talking relentless civil wars, rapid-fire emperor assassinations, and crushing economic inflation. That golden age, it completely vanished. So what happened between those 2 points? The simple answer is overextension. The empire's enormous size went from being its absolute greatest asset to its most fatal liability. It's highly ironic, but Rome essentially started dying of administrative burnout. Just imagine the sheer, ancient logistical nightmare of trying to govern, tax, and defend millions of square miles without modern communication or technology. The administrative and military burden of protecting borders stretching across continents just became way too heavy for one single state to carry. Part 4. The Empire Fractures. Cascading failures. When a machine is just too big to run, the only logical solution is to break it into smaller pieces. To save the empire, Emperor Diocletian did something radical in the late 3rd century. He divided it. But splitting the administration into eastern and western centers actually created a massive imbalance. The Eastern Empire, based in Constantinople, grew incredibly wealthy and resilient. Meanwhile, the Western Empire, based over in Rome, was left starving for resources while facing a constant, heavy barrage of military threats right along its borders. Those external threats really came to a head with the Germanic peoples. Rome always had a pretty complicated relationship with them, but in 378 CE, simmering tensions absolutely exploded at the Battle of Adrianople. Roman forces suffered a catastrophic, absolute defeat against the Goths. This wasn't just a lost battle, it exposed fatal, glaring flaws in Rome's military organization. The invincible legions were failing, and the frontiers were officially porous. And that vulnerability led to the unthinkable. In 410 CE, the Visigothic king Alaric and his forces breached the walls and sacked Rome. Just pause for a second and think about the psychological shock of that moment. For centuries, Rome was the untouched center of the universe. It had literally not been captured by a foreign army in nearly 800 years. While this event didn't single-handedly destroy the empire overnight, it completely shattered the illusion of invincibility. It was the terrifying symbol that Western Rome's authority was bleeding out. Part 5. Collapse and surprising survival. A complex death. We always want historical events to be neat and tidy. We want a single bad guy or one fatal mistake that explains everything. But history is rarely that simple. Rome didn't fall for just one reason. It collapsed under a combination of interconnected burdens. Political instability ruined governance, which led to shrinking tax revenues and serious economic strain. Without money, they couldn't fund the army, which invited frontier migrations. And instead of uniting, generals fought endless civil wars. Every single one of these issues reinforced and worsened the others in a gradual, agonizing decay. The Western Empire essentially lost control piece by piece to rising successor kingdoms. Finally, in 476 CE, a Germanic military leader named Odoacer simply walked in and deposed the young emperor Romulus Augustulus. There was no massive, fiery battle for the city that day. The system had just completely hollowed out. And that deeply anticlimactic moment in 476 is the conventional date we use for the fall of the Western Roman Empire. But here is the massive twist that totally flips the script on this entire story. While the West decayed, the Eastern Roman Empire, operating out of Constantinople, didn't fall. It survived. It adapted. It kept going for almost another 1,000 years. We call it the Byzantine Empire today, but the people living there? They called themselves Romans. The Roman state didn't actually completely disappear until Constantinople finally fell to the Ottoman Empire all the way in 1453. It leaves us with a truly fascinating reality to ponder. Rome wasn't murdered. It died in the West from 1,000 self-inflicted cuts and logistical impossibilities, while completely reinventing itself in the East. It shows us that institutions are incredibly fragile, and that even the mightiest titans can buckle under their own weight. So, looking at the modern world around us today, I'll leave you with this. If Rome fell to 1,000 small cuts, what makes an empire truly invincible?